Hey, Anna.
Hey, Mike.
So I've registered Billy on Petli on the app, like you suggested, but I haven't really got into it. And I'm thinking, well, he's 6 now, and he's pretty well behaved. So, like, really, what's the point of the Petli app? What's it going to do for me?
Well, the Petli app is about understanding that your life with your dog is a journey. And through your journey, just like with us humans, we change and develop over our life stages. And, you know, enriching your dog mentally as well as physically is so important. So for me, for example, with my cases that I see, I'll help dogs on the day and throw so much advice at clients that I know I can see that they can't absorb it all. So of course we supply notes and follow up and backup. But what I can't do as a physical human being is be with these people every single day. So where Petli comes in is that it's on an app and it's easily accessible from home. It comes in all sorts of different levels, from puppy up to senior, in terms of training advice, new activities to try and engage your dog to do. There's always more to do with your dog. This is how I see it. I don't believe people tap into their dog's olfaction enough, not in a way that you can turn every dog into a little mini police search and rescue dog in your own home. And that really enriches dogs. It wears them out so quickly. And then they feel so confident and satisfied when they find what you were asking them to sniff out. So it's about helping your dog and learning more about what makes your dog tick and how to get the best out of your dog.
Okay, you got me sold. I will get back into the app and look into it a bit more, and I will find a program that's suitable for Billy. So to get Petli, Petli, do what I did. Download it from the App Store or Google Play.
Hey, Mr. Binks, you know that the time slot for barking at the moon has recently changed. Well, that's one of the reasons why we're dashing over to Marylebone now to meet up with broadcaster Joe Good to talk about barking at the moon and going nationally, but also about how we met, the present, and even the future with our pets. I'm Anna Webb. Welcome to A Dog's Life. Hi, Joe.
Hi, Anna, and I'm so pleased you brought Mr. Binks. Oh, there we go. Myrtle is just coughing and padding about at the moment. She's so overexcited that you're here.
Well, it's really, really great to see her, and it's all right that she's excited. No, you asked if she was plump. I'm looking at her now, Joe. That is not plump. That is perfect.
She's perfect. I'm holding my stomach in, Anna, because I'm wearing a dress that I'd worn, I think it was 2 years ago, and I've obviously laid down fat. I know we're not allowed to say the word fat, but I think I have laid down fat. So I'm sitting here holding my stomach in, whilst my British Bulldog, you can hear her padding on the wooden floor, she's still got a waist, Anna.
She definitely has, and looks great. So now she's relaxed. That's
Yes.
good. No, it's exciting when she sees Mr. Binks.
She's so excited. You know what's so weird? So Anna, obviously you've been coming here for years and years and years. She knows, I know you talk about this all the time. When you buzz, how many times that buzzer goes all the time with deliveries? When you spoke through it, okay, maybe your voice is loud. We both got loud voices. But she went running down the corridor, and it was like she knew it was you, even though we're so many floors up.
That's funny, but their hearing's so acute, and we've spent a lot of time together, really, Mert, in her young life.
Oh, should we tell everyone you were the first person actually to look after her? I've always said, thank goodness I never had children, because I collected her from Liverpool, brought her down on the train, but I'd got an evening dinner at Claridge's. So I called Anna and said, could you just come and look after this puppy, because I've got to go to dinner. And what was she, Anna? 8 weeks, 10 weeks?
Yes, tiny. She was absolutely tiny. And we did some very important dog training that night.
You truly did. I came back. In fact, I think you see this octopus?
Oh, yes.
This is the remnants of what you brought that night. I mean, it's shredded. She loved it. Her very first toy in London. But it taught me a lesson. I went out, came back, and you'd already... And she was 10 weeks, I think. She could do a sit.
She could do a sit, and she could settle in her crate next door.
Yes.
And not have a hooly.
Yes.
Because, I put her in there, let the crying subside, left it for a whole hour, got her out, went upstairs for a pee, brought her in, did some more games, put her back in there. Absolutely no resistance at all. So that's kind of proof that the sooner you do that with a puppy and balance it, then it helps stop any separation anxiety.
And also, I had a producer, I don't know if you remember, called Esther, and when she had a baby, she was about as capable as I was with a puppy. And they had this, not like, it wasn't a wet nurse, I'm not saying you were a wet nurse, but they had this nurse who just said, Mother, you go to bed, I'll take the baby. And she just did what you did with Myrtle for about a week, which is basically get her into a routine. And, obviously I ended up doing what you suggested I do. That's her walking around, by the way. She's putting herself to bed, Anna. I think she's going into the bedroom.
That's so funny. Well, she knows there's no attention that's
Yeah,
going to
that
be
you're ignoring
laid.
her.
Yeah, isn't that funny?
You've ignored her. Anna always says this, just ignore them. But yes, so you started her routine at literally the first hour she came into London from Liverpool.
I know, she was so sweet. And it was such an honour. And then she came to stay for a week to Hackney. Bit of a
went
shock
east.
for a Marylebone. She went east.
Yeah, she went east. She has yet to become a media star like our previous dogs.
Well, I don't think Prudence will ever make daytime telly.
No. It's weird, isn't it? Because both you and I, we met when both our dogs were getting a lot of attention, and then we ended up getting a lot of attention, and then the dogs got more and more attention, and the four of us became very media savvy, really, for good or for bad.
I know, well, we did very well, didn't we, in terms of media? And that was all down to the very famous dog slot, wasn't it, Joe, really?
And do you know something, Anna? So yesterday, I was asked to be on another podcast, and you can edit this out or keep it in, called Sliding Doors.
Oh, what a great name.
And it's based on the film, which is if you missed the train or if you got on that train, what would have happened? And I was asked for my sliding door moment, and you people listening to this can go to it if they want to, or you can edit this out. But she said to me, can we have two sliding door moments? One of them was meeting you. And I said that I met you because I was hosting a documentary, and I almost didn't go to your flat because at the time they often used to send a cameraman to do talking heads, so they would get your interview and then slot it into the film. But because I was so close to where you lived, I lived in the centre of London, they said, do you want to go and do the interview with Anna? And I did. If I'd never gone that day, we would never have met Anna. There were so many things would never have happened. Do you realise?
Yes, yeah, probably, I mean, that was such a great interview. And that's when I really felt, there was a connection. I think we do have quite similar energy levels, and our dogs really got on, and were also quite similar in their personalities. And I do remember that so well, the dancing bit. And then you left, actually, and the camera crew stayed. I'll never forget when they wanted to move my fish tank. I nearly passed out. And that was one step too far. See, I had my huge tank, so I used to love my fish.
But I remember, so we've got a brilliant sound engineer here today, Jean-Luc, and I remember that the sound engineer on that day, he was out in your courtyard smoking, and I said, are you all right? And he went, oh God, I just got to get out. I said, why? And he went, God, it's like the two of you. He said, it's like stereo noise. And he was just smoking, leaning against your wall, and I was roaring with laughter. But can you hear, listen to it. You can hear Myrtle snore. Listen. I don't know if it'll
It's
pick
faint.
it up. Is it? Yeah, it's well, we can hear it. It's like the ocean. She's gone to bed, everybody, because Anna's ignored her, so she's gone to bed. It worked.
It does work. Ignore them, but you have to stick with it and keep turning around if they're jumping up, fold your arms, look at the ceiling, and those are the top tips, really. And then, yes, but that is a little bit of a bulldog and a half.
Yes. But just to go back to that, it made me think, to go back to the sliding doors moment, of what it would have been so different if we had never met. It would have been so different because we both had dogs, we would have continued, but we wouldn't have gone into the media with them like we did. Everything that sprung from it, the book, the television series, the radio show, all came from one chance meeting. It's extraordinary.
Yes, and guess what? If we hadn't have met, you would never have fed Matilda on raw green tripe.
No. And I said this to you. So Matilda, for anyone that doesn't know anything about my dog, or indeed me, Matilda lived to 13, and which is unbelievable for a British bulldog, because she did have health issues. She had breathing issues, which she had her soft palate shortened. She had her eyes lifted because of the eyelashes. She had her nose widened.
She did, yes.
All of these things, but she lived to 13. And yeah, I always said you extended her life. And I'm in a bit of a dilemma with Myrtle, which I'll talk about in a minute, about her being spayed. But she, touch wood, has had no health issues at all. By this age with Matilda, she'd had to have a major operation.
I remember, gosh, I do remember. I did feel sorry for her with the stitches in her nostrils.
Yeah.
I thought, oh gosh, but I was quite jealous of her eye lift.
Yeah, I was jealous of her eye lift as well. I could have done with that facelift at that time, but she was the one. It cost more having hers
exactly.
done than if I'd had. But it is, so yeah, raw green tripe. That is the. That's what.
I thrust, didn't I, a 500-gram slab. Actually, I put it in a cheap plastic bag. Here she comes.
She
talking about tripe. And Joe, and I said, Joe, please trust me. This is what you should feed Matilda on. Poor Joe left with raw green tripe. What a gift.
But it was, and thereafter, because I remember when I was away and Jono Coleman, who was radio presenter, God rest his soul, was staying in my flat because he'd come over from Australia. And I remember him leaving me this voicemail saying, because he didn't even know I had a dog, I just said, I'm not there, Jono, help yourself. Excuse me. And he just left me this message saying, I've just opened your fridge and there's nothing but green tripe in the freezer. And I think he thought I was just eating it myself.
Gosh.
I know.
I mean, white tripe's fine for humans, but the green makes it inedible, really, for humans, but very, very delicious and nutritious for dogs.
Yeah, white tripe for dogs, I would imagine, has very little nutrition in it. It just looks like flannel, doesn't it?
It does look like flannel. It's strange. Well, it is the stomach, so it's all a bit weird. But yes, it's all been washed and bleached even, which I hope it's not, don't do it with proper bleach if you're going to eat it. But yes, so a lot of the nutrition has gone, indeed. Yeah, so Joe, so I know, so and then Mr. Binks arrived, didn't he, really? Do you remember when Mr. Binks, my rehomed English toy terrier, just to clarify, he's not my boyfriend, he arrived to much kind of, oh no, what are we going to do with Mr. Binks? Because he was so flippy and skittish and unfocused, wasn't he, to say the least, and skinny.
Yes,
he's still skinny.
Completely different to our bull breeds, but it all added up, and and I suppose this is a nice opportunity for me to say this, is that we sort of ran parallel with our lives, living in London, doing what we did, and then because you had the information, I just had the wherewithal to promote the information, but you had the information, so that's why it worked. It really worked well that we started a radio show, because if I could never have done that show on my own, because there was no substance. I knew I loved dogs and I wanted to know more about it, but if you scratch the surface, there was very little underneath. But with you came on board when we started that show, and you had all the knowledge. And for me, it's just been really interesting to see how all of that knowledge has led to you, and I honestly believe this, Anna, it's not because I'm just sitting in front of you, as probably the canine authority in the media.
Well, I really wouldn't go that far, Joe. But I must say, it's great fun. I have done quite a few talking head moments this year, and it's a very proud moment every time I do it. I love going on the Jeremy Vine show, and with Jeremy, I've done a few remarkable airings. Taking on the Pope's biographer was one of my funniest ones, I think, because remember, the Pope came out with this statement that people who don't have children and have pets instead are selfish. So That was good. And I was winning the argument, you see, and he didn't like it, and so started to really talk over me. And so Jeremy... Oh,
Dogs are jumping up and down.
Don't
Mert.
Mert. Wait, come and sit on my knee.
Mert, you're going to get caught up in the wires. Just calm down.
There we are. And so Jeremy had to actually stop the conversation and say, it's Anna's turn to talk. I know.
So,
he stuck up for me.
Yeah.
And
I think why I admire that you go on those shows and you do commercial radio, LBC, with those big blokes who are quite shouty blokes, is for a start, you're in a very vulnerable situation because it's a phone in and people can phone up and say what they think. But also, you and I know the dog world is very unforgiving. And, you know, I could go on and thanks, Myrtle, I could go on and talk about makeup or whatever, and it's all a bit innocuous. But if you start to talk about dogs, you just get first of all, you get an instant feedback, but you're open to so much criticism as much as adoration. And that's why I so admire you, because every time you do it, you put your head on the line.
Yes, and you have to be very careful what you say, but I think everything I say comes from the heart and from a lot of knowledge as to how to live with dogs.
Well, it's intelligent.
How to train dogs. And the biggest part is explaining on air, for example, with the various dog attacks. When I did GB News, one breakfast show with Eamon Holmes and Isabella Webster, I took Mr. Binks in, and in a way he saved it, because he knew what to do instinctively, which was sit on Eamon Holmes's pile of newspapers, which was slap bang in front of all of the cameras, and he just became centre stage because he is interested in the equipment. Look, he's sniffing them.
Sniffing the microphone.
But it's important just to make it clear that you're talking about dogs here, and that dogs aren't people. So everyone thinks this is shocking, all these deaths and these dogs, they're bad and so on. But you see, when you look at why these incidents happened from a dog's point of view, not from a little person in a furry suit's point of view, because they're not little people in furry suits, so they don't think like little people or like humans, they think like dogs. And then when you unpick these situations, you do realise that none of them were the dog's fault. And to explain that quite quickly and eloquently sometimes can be difficult, particularly with a shock jock shouting at you, which can happen on some of the commercial stations, as you say. But certainly with Eamon Holmes, he's such a dog lover. That morning he was just mesmerised by Mr. Binks.
Yeah.
So Mr. Binks saved the day, actually, and also showed how well behaved a little dog could be.
Yeah.
And that was really good. But yes, you have to be, particularly with the dog walker that was attacked by her own pack of dogs, that was a very difficult one to do. And for some reason, not many other people wanted to talk about it.
For that reason, because of the vitriol. If the amount of vitriol you get, whatever side. And the thing is, you never take sides. You just lay out the situation as you've just done. And you just go, well, this is this and this is this. And you can draw your conclusions from it, as to what could have happened, what should have happened, and why it did happen. And I think that's the intelligence behind it, instead of ranting. Because, you and I know, we were labelled the mad dog women for a long time, until people started to realise what we were doing. And then people emulated us, many came and went. And then people started, when we were getting guests on our show that were really respected, leading scientists and A-listers, then I think we didn't have anything to prove in the end, but we did at the beginning. You must have felt that.
I think, the show, The Dog Slot, was so random and so unusual that I think it just drew lots of attention, good and bad. And I think the reason the show, I think, has been such a success is that it mixes entertainment with serious, substance with light items. And I think a lot of people in the dog world just have to be serious the whole time. And also it's his, as you say, a lot of people have a lot of opinions, and they're so many different schools of thought in the dog world, what to feed your dog on, how to train your dog, should a dog wear a harness or a collar, and so on, should they wear a little jacket like Binx has got on at the moment? Well, it's pretty chilly when he gets outside, and so I would say he benefits from it, to be honest, but others might disagree completely. In fact, clothing for dogs, 15 years ago was a complete no-no.
And I think that's how we changed, because when we were on daytime television, we would, every Halloween, I always think of you and I dressed as pumpkins. And the dogs dressed as pumpkins, and we didn't even think about it. Now we would never do it. We'd never do it, or if you do it, you say, look, we've put it on for 5 seconds for a photo opportunity, then we take it off. But we never thought about it. We knew our dogs enjoyed it, and I honestly do believe they did enjoy it. But that's no excuse now. You can't use that as an excuse now, because people will say you're ridiculing your dogs and you shouldn't be laughing at them.
Or exploiting your dogs
for
your own gain, which is something that I think's become more and more as social media has really rocketed, and you see a lot of people doing crazy videos of their dogs to get likes, which sometimes, I do find a lot of them very amusing sometimes, but you think, gosh, how often have you filmed this or practiced this silly moment to capture it sophisticatedly enough to post? That wasn't a one-off. Were you really there with your camera when that bull terrier went flying across your bed and went right through your table lamp and knocked everything over, or has that been trained?
Yeah, that's going to make people re-look at these. I've seen that very video you're talking about.
Have you? Yeah.
And I remember thinking, gosh, that was good timing. She happened to have her phone out at that time.
Exactly.
But I also, that particular video, I always said to you, and it's the same, you and I have always disagreed on this, I am fascinated by people as much as you're fascinated by dog. If you and I are in a car and someone walks by with a dog, I will go, I like that coat, and you go, look at that breed. Do you know what I mean? That's the difference. And I've always said to you, I much prefer photographs of dogs if there's a human in it. It makes me appreciate the dog more, whereas you're very content with dog art. And does that lend itself to social media? See, the videos that make me laugh are the ones with animals and humans, not just the animal.
Yeah, no, that is interesting. The whole package is, of course, the human and the animal, and that's the whole package that sells. I get that. I'm just such a dog nerd, I'm just such a dog nerd. But I like both, don't get me wrong. And I do love watching humans with their dogs, and thinking, gosh, that's an interesting character. And because what interests me is the fact that a lot of very tall men choose a Chihuahua.
Yeah, Mickey Rourke.
Mickey Rourke. Gosh, the classic. Somehow could we get to Mickey Rourke?
Is he still alive?
I think so. I haven't heard he's died.
Gosh, you might have to add an add-on at the end of this. R.I.P. Mickey Rourke. So we don't know. I don't know. He's gone very quiet. Maybe I'm thinking of Meatloaf. Did Meatloaf have a dog?
I don't know, but he did die.
Yes. Keep all this in, because it does educate people on the deaths of celebrities.
Of course.
Myrtle's snoring again in the other room. She keeps coming in and trying her luck. And
she
then
does.
going back out there.
Yeah, she is. She's really trying her luck. And now she's gone right off in a huff.
Big men and little dogs.
It is a phenomenon. I think, and I'm interested in that because there's so much in little dogs. People think they're silly, people think they're small, people think they've got smaller brains because they're small, and all of this is ridiculous. And I think small dogs, because Mr. Binx is my first ever small dog, and I just adore him so much because he's small.
And I envy you, because if he doesn't walk, you just lift him up like that, whereas Myrtle doesn't walk and I'm just stuffed. She just lies down on the pavement. But here we are, both of us spinsters of the parish. Would you, the television series, it's Me or the Dog?
Yes.
Would you, and I've never asked you this before, you've been in relationships since I've known you. Have you ever had to choose between your partner and the dog?
No, not specifically, although I won't get involved with anybody who doesn't like dogs. None of my friends, being a dog lover is a prerequisite for anyone really I'm even an acquaintance with, to be honest with you, because I think, you know so much from a person simply by that. Somebody who doesn't like dogs, fine, that's their opinion and there's no problem with it, but I don't want to be their friend because I really don't think we'd have anything to talk about. So choosing, I like my dogs to myself. I'm a bit selfish.
Yes, you do.
I don't like sharing.
No, I'm a bit like that. I would never let someone walk my dog. Having said, I let you sort of look after her the moment she was brought back to...
I know, but you can trust me. The problem is, there's so much can happen. Binx has never been walked by anybody else. So because he is a bit flighty and he's so small that I just feel, it's an accident waiting to happen, really.
Yeah.
So it's about, with blokes, it's a difficult one, really, because if ever it was going to work with me and a bloke, I'd have to get over this, really. But it's sort of, the dogs are mine, I make the decisions, don't argue about what I feed them. I'm the canine nutritionist in the room. In fact, don't criticise anything, don't suggest anything, just accept everything the way it is. Does that make sense?
Yeah, total sense.
But then, of course, in a relationship, everyone wants to have their say. And look, I was reading about this new dog food. Maybe we could do this. Maybe we shouldn't feed raw. I'm a bit worried about the raw food being in the fridge. I don't want my food. Can you imagine that argument happening? So
the argument is usually... So I'm just drinking some water. The argument is usually dogs on the bed, in the bed or whatever. That's usually... I think in most new relationships, that's usually the argument. But I know, I never want another relationship ever. I've had enough relationships. Not that people are throwing themselves at my feet asking to move in, but they'd have to move out if they didn't like the dogs.
Oh, yeah.
On the bed. That's just...
Goes without saying. I mean, my dad always used to say, you know where you are with a dog, and the love of a dog, it can't be beaten. That is your true friend that will always be there, never answers back, and doesn't mind whether your roots are showing, you've laid on a bit of fat or whatever it might be, that the fridge is empty because you can't be bothered to go to the supermarket. It's all good with your dog.
As we head towards Christmas,
yes,
Anna, and looking back at this year, I mean, it's been, coming out the pandemic, and all of us who had dogs in the pandemic were so lucky, to be honest. You had company, especially if you lived on your own. But if you look back at the year, and you always say dog ownership's tripled. Here, we're in London at the moment, it's certainly tripled here. You can see it literally everywhere. What do you think the future for urban dogs is? If you think that most of the charities now are fit to burst, whilst at the same time you've got people desperate to adopt and can't, so you've got this stalemate, basically. What do you think next year? What's in store? What do you think's in store for the dog world? What sort of things will we talk about, do you think?
I think what we need to be talking about next year is more training and a lot more engagement between owners and their dogs. In a proactive way, to be honest with you. Yet it's interesting, I've spoken to a few trainers just this week, and no one's training their dogs. No one's ringing anybody up. It's all gone a bit quiet.
Why is that, do you think?
Well, I think it might be because last month was the most expensive month for mortgages in the last 15 years.
Yeah.
So I think people are feeling the pinch. And then I feel that's a very worrying sign, because a lot of people employ dog walkers on a regular basis. They cost a huge amount of money. Doggy daycare is the same. So I do feel that the cost of living crisis is going to...
Do you know, you're absolutely right, because I live right near Regent's Park. Sorry, that's my water bottle. You live near the marshes, so you see how many dog walkers are out. There are far fewer. There used to be regular ones here in W1. I don't think I've seen them for months. It's a really interesting point, yeah.
And the other thing that's hitting next year that I think will change the whole dynamic is the new public space control orders. Yeah, which apparently some London boroughs are bringing in March. I don't know if that's going to be a trial phase, but it is going to mean that dog walkers have to have only four maximum rather than 6. So that's going to impact on owners, and probably the prices are going to go up, so that's going to impact on owners. So I'm not sure, and as you say, rescues are brimful, and it's a sorry state of affairs really. But the worrying thing about rescues being full is that will people turn to these online sales sites that I can't bear? I feel this is just taking things a little bit too far.
Yeah, but you and I have friends who have done that, who have tried so hard to rescue, really hard, almost banging down the doors of these great big wealthy charities. Sorry, but they are. Not all of them, but some of them are. And not allowed to have a dog. So then they will go and buy one online, And that's what really frustrates me. It so frustrates me.
Oh, it's so frustrating, but they don't have to buy online. Now, for example, if all live animals, because apparently they sell racehorses over the internet. I mean, can you imagine buying any animal, but can you imagine buying a horse over, it's ridiculous. It all needs to slow down. It needs to go back to how it used to be, where you contact a reputable breeder. You may have to wait a year or 2 years for your perfect puppy, but it will be a health tested, as perfect as you can get puppy. And rather than these online sites, they're just a shopping window for a raft of puppies that come in. Thousands of puppies come in from Ireland every year and from Eastern Europe. They've been bred in terrible conditions. They haven't had the best start in life. Often they don't live very long, causing heartbreak all round. It's just an awful, evil money-making machine. So that's something I really want to see change. I feel, for me, dogs are an antidote to all this technology that really is quite overwhelming. I find it overwhelming, Joe, anyway, as you know. They're an antidote. They're back to normal. They're just outside in the park, nothing complicated particularly. Whereas, I really lose my temper sometimes with technology. If the phone says no on me, I'm like, no, and I can't bear it, and I'll just be right, that's it, I'm going out with the dogs, and then I'm happy. But I really feel that life needs to rebalance a little bit, and we need to understand the value of dogs as man's best friend for keeping us sane and reminding us of the key values in life, and not to be distracted by all this technology.
Absolutely. And I think that's why I worry when technology is used with animals as well. There's all these gadgets coming out and all this, and I just think, oh, for heaven's sake, who was it once said to us they need a lead and they need a collar?
Me.
That's it. All the other stuff, the hound pound, all the stuff. Do they need it really? That's well, we've discussed the hound pound at length, but you do worry about, and if you said that, what you said about people's finances being heavily hit, which will affect dogs the way dogs are cared for, and probably the way dogs are fed, and that's a major consideration as well, because it's all very well you and I saying we feed our dogs raw. That is a very expensive choice, and compared to dried dog food or a can of dog, so the dogs are probably going to get it in each direction.
Well, and it is a shame that, our vet profession costs 4 times more for an average vet procedure in this country than it does, say, in France.
Yeah.
There's that aspect as well. And I think a lot of people would love to adopt, but they're afraid of the vet bills.
Yeah.
So that's a terrible shame and a kind of an irony, I think, actually. So it's a complicated issue, but
looking ahead, Anna, because one of the things I hope maybe will happen next year is, and I always think we played a role in this, is that vets' fees will be displayed, because legally they have to be, but there's no vet I know, and I've been to so many vets, have ever put a price list in reception. So if they just started to do that, that would help, wouldn't it? So you look at the price list and think, okay, what can I and what can't I afford?
Exactly, and just perhaps be a little bit, less ego to sell medication when medication may not be needed. That's the point, rather than for the sake of it. That's what I hear a lot of people talking about at the moment.
But I just think looking back at what we've been talking about dogs for 14 years in a professional capacity. One of the things that I think that really will never get out of my mind, and Matilda was alive just in between lockdowns, is visiting my vet in the middle of the street in a long queue as the vet came down all masked up, looking at most dogs are fearful anyway of vets, but a vet, masked up, going down the street and people waiting for hours in the cold because you weren't allowed into the surgery. You weren't allowed to go in because of the distance. And that, I don't think, has appeased my local vets. You can go in now, but there's a queue to get an appointment, can take days, even weeks. And that's because of the increase in dog population.
And Brexit, Joe.
And Brexit,
Yeah.
absolutely. So
Yeah.
for me, Anna, in the past 14 years, that's been a massive deal, vets, and probably their stress levels, because it's not just they're earning a fortune, they're probably so stressed out with because they're dealing with all of us, not just the animal. They're dealing with us weeping on their doorstep or whatever. So they must have had a shocking 3 years, I would have thought.
Yes, and they've been really under pressure because there's been loads more dogs and less vets. I think there's 50% less vets because a lot were from Europe, and we've always relied on a veterinary workforce to come in from Italy or France or wherever. So I know it's a shortage. It took 4 days to get, a stray cat landed on my doorstep 11 weeks ago. It took 4 days to get an appointment just to get him a parasite control.
There you are. You see,
know?
In the old days, you'd go in the same day you called up.
Well, that's it. But there aren't any appointments. So there's too many dogs, not enough vets, prices are too high, strangely much higher than the rest of Europe. And I think that's being investigated at the moment.
And I think that's at the end of this year, I think that's something to really be concerned about next year. I think there's going to be a huge shift because it's already started, hasn't it?
And the interesting thing, in the pandemic, the pet that was the least picked up on, which, I think is strange to think that rabbits were more popular than a cat. And, a lot of cats are happy to be indoors. And there's lots of breeds of cats that are designed to be indoors. Your average sort of short hair moggy, like my dear, bless his soul, Gremlin, he hated being indoors. Isn't that funny? So rabbits and guinea pigs beat cats. I can't understand it.
No.
Cats live a long time
Yeah.
if you look after them right.
I know.
Whereas
I don't know, is it accessibility? Who knows? But to talk about Gremlin died.
Yeah, so I suppose really, this year, Joe, Gremlin's death made this year absolutely awful, really, putting it in a nutshell.
But Anna, at the risk of you getting upset, this is, for me, as someone who's witnessed the death of your dog, my dog, I just thought you dealt with it so well, because when Molly died, you lost it. And I can say that to you because I'm your friend, but you literally lost it.
I've said it on air, I've
yeah.
said it publicly, I did lose it,
But you didn't with Gremlin, and I honestly believe it's because we've learnt, you more than me, a huge amount about mortality and animals. We really have. And we, on the show, we always say, if your pet's passed away, let us know because we'll pay tribute and everyone around will understand. And people do. Most weeks there is an animal that's died. And that helped when Matilda died. It really did help because I just thought, gosh, we've comforted people who've lost their pets so many times. And it's incomparable. It's not the same as a human death. It's nothing like it, to be honest. But I just thought you did really well because I just thought you're going to go right off the graph.
I know.
But you didn't.
No, I didn't. Well, not in public. I have been quite
Wailing
upset.
at home.
Wailing at home, over the kitchen
now,
sink.
And this is nice because you to go into a new year, you have another cat that almost arrived in the same way Gremlin did, which is just came through, just appeared in your life like this Jack the Lad.
Yes, although Baggy, as I've named him, isn't Jack the Lad. It's almost he arrived so that I could do that senior cat, because Gremlin died young, so he never got old, which was really the silver lining of it all, really. So I always wondered how would I cope with Gremlin being stiff or creaky, and he never got there. So in a way, wonderful. But this little chap is old, and he's I think he's been feral. You see, the interesting thing about Baggy is he does have his testicles, which I'm so going to keep.
Is this the trail?
Because I don't think he's strong enough to take a general anaesthetic, but he's no problem with his testicles. Everybody was saying he's going to spray all around the flat and be ferocious and all the rest of it. Well, no, he's actually not a problem at all. But he's adapted so well to the flat. You know, there's a part of me that wants to believe that Gremlin is channeling himself through this such a quirky cat. He's not a looker, where Gremlin was the most handsome cat in the world. He was actually gifted, but he was never vain with it. Gremlin always had a sense of humour about everything, didn't he? He was Jack the Lad. He was the artful dodger, and I think it was curiosity that killed him.
Killed the cat. But your arc is now complete again. As I always called Anna's home, her menagerie, or her arc. And it's now complete, and that's a nice way to end the year, isn't it?
It is. You're right.
You know, you've got your 2 dogs and you've got your cat, and you know, you'll sail on next year.
Who knows what next year will bring as well? And I think it's about building resilience, isn't it? And keeping good friends around.
Totally.
And staying positive in a time that, couldn't have been more up and down over the last few years for everybody.
No, I absolutely agree. And, you know, you and I have made amazing friends through these dogs, amazing friends. And, you know, and our show's now national.
It is national.
Which is unbelievable.
And what a journey. Who would have known?
And I still believe there's people in Nottingham who are scratching their heads over what the hell's going on a Friday night at 11 o'clock. But they'll slowly come round like everyone else does.
Well, we're getting the calls.
We're getting the calls non-stop, actually. So, yeah.
Which is, that's the applause. You taught me that. The
calls are applause. And also the greatest irony of all this is when we started the Dog Hour, our editor at the BBC he didn't like dogs, he almost loathed dogs, didn't he? And he tolerated you and I because he knew it was popular, so he let us do it. And one of the greatest ironies now, he's taken retirement and he's more obsessed about dogs than even Anna Webb.
That's not possible. No.
But what he said, and I think this is interesting, and I wonder how many other people relate to this. He said, I'm actually not, Joe, interested about dogs. I'm only interested in my dog. And it's true. He loves that dog. But, when his wife sent us a picture of him with the dog, we were just hysterical because he was so anti-dog, wasn't he?
He was anti-dog. I remember giving him all the statistics of dog ownership when we weren't allowed to bring the dogs in, because for 3 years we rocked the nighttime airwaves, didn't we? We did 2 hours every Thursday night, and we got the dogs into the studio remarkably, and other people's dogs in as well. And apart from one dog hair scare, we remained. But then we moved to daytime, prime time, and dogs weren't allowed in the building. So
but now we're back national, and guess what my plan is for next year, Anna?
Bring the dogs in.
We'll bring the dogs back in, so watch this space, everybody.
Hurrah!
Hurrah! Woof woof!
Woof woof, Joe. Thank you. That's our show, Mr. Binks. What did you think? Yes, it is interesting to have a spot of reflection from time to time. And what's that? Yes, you're right. It is time for Woof of the Week. Remember to tune in to Barking at the Moon every Friday between 11 p.m. and midnight on Late Night Joe. Well, I hope you all enjoyed it. If you did, go on, rate and review the show wherever you tune into your podcasts. Thanks again, of course, to Joe for joining us today, and all the links are in the show notes. Thanks, of course, to Mike, my producer. Find out more about him at Pod People UK, and to find out a bit more about me, go to annaweb.co.uk or at annawebdogs. What's that, Mr. Binks? Oh gosh, yes, you're right. We will be back in your feed next Sunday. So go on, why don't you subscribe now? It's free. And that way you'll never miss another show. Bye for now.
people.